I have to say, this is the first time I've been on the same bill as Rabbi Rosman. So Rishus Hara, and Yishikoach for another amazing shiur. And just to say thank you from all Am Yisrael for all the Torah you're teaching us. Pat and Alfie and all the family, thank you for this honor, getting a chance to talk about Danny. I was going to start at the beginning, but I've got Rob today next to me. So I've got to ask one question. Is Yoni here? Or I should ask, did Yoni turn out okay?
What? Yeah.
I'm curious. I'm curious. Because for reasons still unclear to me, Dina would leave 5-month-old Yoni in the care of Danny and me while we were supposed to be working. I honestly don't know what you were thinking. I have to tell you, Yoni was the best toy Danny had ever received. He was convinced he could teach him to walk by 6 months old and be playing swing ball with us in the back garden by 8. In fact, Yoni was a swing ball. Going back in time a bit, October 1986, I moved from the small town of Newcastle in the north down to London to start university, a little apprehensive on my first day. I did not know many people in the big city. It took over an hour by the tube to get to Imperial College in South Kensington. And when I finally got there, waiting in line to register were 3 fellow students wearing kippots. Naturally, I gravitated over and met a certain Danny Frie. I know we are in 2025, so please don't take this the wrong way, but it was love at first sight. What followed were 4 wonderful years. I would say mainly of fun, with a bit of studying thrown in, during those rare moments when we were both actually awake. Rob has asked me to share some anecdotes. I'm really not sure that the word anecdotes adequately describes stories about Danny. The Danny legends are still being told at Kiddush clubs in Israel, London and beyond. We all know the story of Danny riding into his wedding with Mara on a tandem. So I'll add to this, what you perhaps don't know, is that some years before, one day, Danny decided that he and I would ride on a borrowed tandem from his home in Golders Green all the way to university during morning rush hour on very busy roads. Danny had such energy and enthusiasm for everything that, way against my better judgment, I was convinced this was a good idea. And Danny being Danny, there was no taking it easy. We flew through bends at 30 miles an hour, leaning at 45 degrees. I was petrified. But those are the memories you never forget. On a more normal day, when we weren't riding on a tandem, we would do the Grand Prix race every day on the way home. My mini metro versus Danny's Triumph Acclaim, and he loved his Triumph. The Hendon Way, just before Brent Cross flyover, was the finish line. Sometimes this meant coming up the Vale on the wrong side of the road in order to overtake him at the traffic lights. I mean, how else you would expect a mini metro to beat an Acclaim? There are many Danny stories. A lot involve hiking, where Danny had a map and a 1-hour ramble led by Danny would turn into a full-day hike over difficult terrain. But just for a second, I want to focus a little on Danny's love of Torah and mitzvot and Eretz Yisrael. Danny was very makpid about doing mitzvot in the best way possible. At the kosher lunch at Imperial, there was no bread, so you would see Danny every day considering his plate of food and decide which was the correct order to say each bracha on all of his food. I will mention that the cook was a very stern Irish lady who served fish and chips on Friday, something to do with being Catholic, I believe. You never dared ask for seconds. So of course, Danny took this as a challenge and eventually charmed this lady sufficiently so that he and I received seconds of chips every week. Danny saw Hashem's hand in everything. He saw Torah in everything. For example, we had to make it to our master's year to attend a course given by the very wonderful Professor Mani Lehman, Alav Shalom. He gave a course on principles of computer science management. There were 6 of us in the room, sitting in front of Professor Lehman. This sometimes presented a challenge in itself, because if Danny nodded off, there was no waking him. And with only 6 of us in the room, nowhere to hide. On one particular day, Danny did stay awake. The lecture was all about logic and order in managing computer projects. As we walked out of the lesson, Danny remarked to me, he said, and these are his words, "Professor Lehman is teaching the Goyim Gemara. They just don't know it." Danny was very dedicated to the idea of Kiruv. He was a madrich at many Kiruv weekends organized by Taflit Shabbat. This often involved coming home very late in the early hours of Monday morning. Often, only a few hours later, Danny had to hand in as yet unstarted coursework. I'm not sure it's appropriate to reveal how we got away with this. Except to say, one piece of coursework, Danny got A+, and I got C-. With the comment, very similar to Fry's. It was worth it for extra fish and chips. Danny had very strong ideals. His love of the land of Israel, of Medinat Yisrael, of his plans to make Aliyah as soon as he finished his degree. He never made any attempt to hide any of this. In fact, he was very proud of it, and I include here also when speaking to our non-Jewish fellow students. I promise I'm not going to talk about politics, but we had a fellow student brought up in Jordan. His grandma lived in Jerusalem, but he and his family never had the chance to meet her. We had an Egyptian who was quite active in the Palestinian society during the first Intifada, stirring up quite a bit of trouble. But Danny just showed love and endless positive energy to everybody that he met. In the end, we became good friends with these two. In fact, there were lectures where the 4 of us would sit at the back and chat and have fun. Danny did fulfill his dream of making Aliyah almost immediately after graduating. 3 years later, I was also living here and looking for my first job. There were several opportunities, but Danny was working at NDS, and full of his usual bursting enthusiasm for everything that he did, he easily persuaded me to join him there. As fate would have it, out of a company of 80 people, as it was then, we ended up sitting next to each other, even though we were in different groups. The truth is that there is enough material from the NDS years for this entire little speech. What I will say is that there was so much commotion at times that after a couple of years we had to be separated. I can see a certain team leader sitting there smiling at me. Before I finish, I do want to take this opportunity to thank Pat and Alfie and all the Fries for welcoming me into their home during my student years and beyond. I am not sure what you made of this loud, cheeky northerner, but you opened up your home to me with such warmth and hospitality. It's something that inspired me when I set up my own home. And maybe I have not been to as many of these shiurim as I should have, but I can say Danny's memory lives on in so many ways. I always look forward to an eye test and let them envision. It's always good to catch up and reminisce about the old days with Dina and Rob, while the hours of tennis in the back garden. I think Rob still has no idea how Ireland has got our masters. And Lizette is here, and she can tell you a few years back, we took a few days in the West End. So we rented bikes and rode out to Imperial College. Maybe not on a tandem, and maybe we were a little more cautious than Danny would have been. But just to share some of the memories of very good days. You know, South Kensington has to be one of London's prettiest residential neighbourhoods. And yet the Huxley building, housing the Department of Computing on Queen's Road, has to be one of the ugliest 60s style buildings that you could find. But it still holds within 4 years of the absolute best memories. We miss Danny. Am Yisrael would be so much better off if he was still with us. and it's hard to grasp how much he's missed in these 30 years. Shlomo HaMelech teaches us the pasuk in Mishlei, Zecher Tzadik Livracha. Chazal have explanations of what this pasuk means, but I found an explanation that I like from Rab Amihud Schwartz, based on his Sfas Emes, which says that a tzaddik serves as a model to emulate, and the act of remembering him carries a bracha because it inspires us to follow in his path. And I think, if there were one thing that I was to pick of Danny's many traits, it would be his unconditional Ahavat Yisrael. With my tefillot, that all the mitzvot that he performed with such kavanah will help lead to a speedy release of our chatufim and bring home all of the chayalim safely. Yehi Zachor Baruch.
Amen.
So much, Andrew. So that we conclude tonight's gathering.